There are dates like that which we remember more easily than others, because they have left such a mark on us. For me and many who were hesitant about vaccination, it is first and foremost that of July 12th, 2021. In France, we were taken aback, listening to the President of the Republic announce all the restrictions that would apply to the unvaccinated. We were even banned from going shopping in hypermarkets. Just imagine. Healthcare professionals were going to be suspended, meaning deprived of their salary, deprived of their means of livelihood, so, in a certain sense, killed. Shocked. We were even more so when Brother Samuel Heard of the governing body stated that Jehovah's Witnesses have no reason, to refuse vaccination on religious grounds, and that 98% of the Bethel members in the United States were vaccinated. The mere proportion of 98% is an admission that there was no longer any freedom. When in a country the president gets such a score in elections, it's necessarily a dictatorship, isn't it? By the way, there were 800 Bethelites in Warwick in 2021. The 2% unvaccinated therefore represented 16 people. The 8 members of the governing body at the time, all being married, represented with their wives, also 16 people. Is it a coincidence? I'm just asking the question, because it is well known that the President of France has never been vaccinated. The other date that will take a very long time to fade from my memory is December 19th, 2022, the day when the elders received a letter via the JD.org messaging system informing them that unvaccinated elders and pioneers would be banned from training. A brother from South America, who was an elder for 20 years, wrote this book, The Sins Committed During the COVID-19 Pandemic. It is an open letter he wrote to the governing body. It was published in September 2024. I truly advise every Jehovah's Witness, whether practicing or non-practicing, every former Jehovah's Witness, and all those who are around Jehovah's Witnesses, to read this book, to acquire it in paper format, and to keep it in their library. It is a book that will be remembered. It very faithfully describes the events that took place between 2021 and 2024 among Jehovah's Witnesses, and highlights all the Christian principles that were violated. I translated this book into French and published it on Amazon and Apple. It currently exists in Spanish, English, German, Croatian, and French. A version in Lingala will soon be released. The electronic version is free and available on the website Effets Indésirables, JW.fr. This site allows anyone experiencing adverse effects from mass vaccination to share their testimony. The paperback version costs only €11, which is the cost of printing. Witnesses from around the world have mobilized to translate it. You can offer your help through the same website. I would like to thank its author, as well as all the translators and proofreaders. The book has already been sent to the Central Committee in September 2024 to 17 branches around the world, and to Brother Anthony Morris personally. If you want to send the paperback format to someone else, please follow the instructions on the website. I will therefore use it to explain the sins committed by the members of the Central Committee. Its author, Luke 17:10, first cites the Watchtower of September 15, 2015. Neither a branch office, nor the elders of a congregation, are authorized to dictate to a witness what decisions to make regarding medical care. Who disagrees with that? Everyone agrees. Moreover, this was confirmed in April 2021 by a letter that the Central Committee sent to congregations worldwide. So let me remind you, April 2021, the mass vaccination campaign started in December 2020. This letter states, getting vaccinated is a personal decision. Therefore, love, Christian love, is to respect the decision that each person makes based on their conscience informed by the Bible, and not to force anyone to do the same as we do. Incredible. When you know what happened next. Thus, until April 2021, the conscience of each Jehovah's Witness was respected. Witnesses who were conscientious objectors to vaccination, like me, had nothing to fear. And besides, everyone respected each other. Some, not many, were the first to get vaccinated, even if it meant going ahead of others. And the conscientious objectors to vaccination freely expressed that they would not risk getting vaccinated. The assemblies of Jehovah's Witnesses lived in peace in that regard. So I will make a parenthesis to say that the unvaccinated, also pejoratively called anti-vax, do not prevent anyone from getting vaccinated. They are simply demanding the freedom of treatment, the freedom to choose how they want to be treated. While mRNA vaccination is banned in several states in the United States, the unvaccinated have nothing to do with it. They are, above all, committed to vaccine freedom. Starting from July 2021, members of the Central College took turns to gradually influence all Jehovah's Witnesses worldwide to get injected. The Christian conscience had disappeared. We were supposed to be good-for-nothing slaves, and we had to obey, period. One must acknowledge the members of the Central College for their great skill in manipulating crowds. Gently, like gradually tightening a vice on a piece until it breaks. It even seems with Tuvis that this had been prepared long in advance, since at that moment, every Jehovah's Witness recalled the words contained in the 2013 Watchtower, which said at that time, the Watchtower speaks of a moment in the future. The vital directives you will receive from Jehovah's organization may not seem wise from a human standpoint, but we must all be willing to obey any instruction we receive, whether it seems rational or not from a strategic or human perspective. I remember very well that these words were repeated 2 or 3 times over a period of 5 years, and I had told myself when I heard them, if ever the governing body asks you to do something against your conscience that would endanger your life, you will have to disobey. The moment had therefore come. I then remembered the significant event of my life, the refusal to perform my military service to avoid killing my fellow man. And here, I was not at risk of making a decision that would endanger my life or that of my fellow man, even if this time the weapon was different. The question that all Jehovah's Witnesses then asked themselves, but what could have possibly driven the governing body to completely change their viewpoint and take anti-Christian measures? I will come back to this in the next episode. But for now, let's talk about the sins committed. The governing body has evidently placed obedience to the government above Christian conscience, transgressing its own words and those of Jesus. And I quote from the book, "The sins committed during the COVID-19 pandemic. If the authority demands something that offends a well-educated Christian conscience, it goes beyond the limits given to it by God. When Caesar demands what belongs to God, we must recognize that it is God's will that prevails." In this case, regarding vaccination, many governments around the world have taken measures contrary to their own constitution. The Central College exerted such manipulation that I gradually saw my brothers, who were hesitant or even very hesitant about vaccination, give in. There was such pressure from the group. Because obeying the Central College for an average Jehovah's Witness is equivalent to obeying God. There is no difference. Some even call the Jehovah's Witnesses organization our mother. So, if your mother tells you to get vaccinated, there's no question to ask. Some will say, yes, but the Central College has always said, get vaccinated, if possible. And that's absolutely true. In December 2021, a year after the start of the vaccination campaign, I wrote my second letter to the Central College to tell them to stop forcing us to get vaccinated. If I said that, it was because I truly felt it, and I felt it around me. And their response clearly showed that they were manipulating us. Moreover, I invite you to read my testimony on the website Effet indésirable des débuts de fer. On page 7, I included all the letters, all the correspondence that I sent and received with the governing body and the French branch. The governing body went as far as to consider exemplary the sisters in Bulgaria, who took the jobs of women who were laid off because they were not vaccinated. No empathy for these poor women who found themselves without resources overnight. It was a carte blanche given to everyone to blame the unvaccinated and attribute all the world's faults to them. So one can truly say that the members of the governing body at the time all participated in this violation of conscience. Moreover, all those who associated themselves and pressured others to get vaccinated are complicit in this violation of conscience. This is very serious. Another sin committed is the extortion of consent. The extortion of consent can be understood as a situation where a person is forced to agree to something they would not have freely consented to otherwise. I can cite a first example. A brother in the same situation as me, never vaccinated since birth, hostile to all vaccines, not having vaccinated his own children, knowing that the COVID vaccine could be deadly, never having had COVID and knowing it was a psychological operation, broke down after 6 months of intervention by the Central College. He got vaccinated along with his family, just to obey the representative of God on earth, the very ones who dare to say, we are neither inspired nor infallible. Can you imagine such a theft of trust? A second Jehovah's Witness I know did not want to get vaccinated and kept waiting and waiting. His entire family were Jehovah's Witnesses and put pressure on him. He finally gave in April 2022. 2 hours after the first dose, his eyes were bloodshot. In the days that followed, he had pain all over. For a year, he lived in hell until he could no longer speak. His doctor told him not to get a second dose, but his Jehovah's Witness relatives urged him to get more doses, just to obey Jehovah. It's a bit like they were saying to him, you got vaccinated, you almost died, but get vaccinated again and you'll see Jehovah will bless you. A pioneer sister who always wanted to be exemplary was very reluctant about the vaccine. She knew that if she accepted it, she risked falling ill again and dying. She prayed over and over again to follow Jehovah's guidance. So much so that she even made an appointment to get vaccinated. When the time came, she was physically unable to move because it was so unnatural. Yes, I state it loud and clear. All Jehovah's Witnesses who forced their fellow believers to get vaccinated are guilty of extortion of consent. They have sinned against God. Everyone knows the fourth commandment, you shall not steal. Well, when you steal someone's conscience, when you steal someone else's trust, it is the application of this commandment. The highlight of this manipulation was the latest news update given by the governing body in January 2022. We discover a family that does not want to get vaccinated because they went on the internet. They pray to Jehovah, they only watch the j.org channel. And as a result, they make the right decision. And when you watch and re-watch this excerpt, at no point does she say she is going to get vaccinated, but everyone understood it. Not a single Jehovah's Witness understood otherwise. Yet she never actually says it. And indeed, the governing body can always argue before a court that they never explicitly said one must get vaccinated. So what do you call a person who achieves their goals while being careful not to break the law? I asked the artificial intelligence Grok about this. It says this: one might call such a person a shrewd strategist or someone cunning. If you want to be a bit more specific and vivid, you could say they are walking a tightrope or are skilled at circumventing the rules without outright breaking them. A term like jurisprudent could also work in a more formal context, but with a hint of irony if they are exploiting the subtleties of the law to their advantage. It all depends on the tone you want to set. Since I have doubts about the intention of the Central College, I replied this to the artificial intelligence. The intention is to vaccinate people without their consent. Here is its response. If the intention is to vaccinate people against their consent while staying within the limits of the law, it becomes a moral and legal balancing act, Such a person could be described as a skillful manipulator or an architect of persuasion if they use subtle strategies to influence without explicitly crossing the line of consent. An expression like playing with grey areas could also be appropriate, suggesting that they exploit legal or ethical ambiguities to achieve their goals. In this specific case, one could imagine someone who, for example, sets up very strong incentives or psychological pressure campaigns while avoiding direct coercion. That would be illegal. It remains a slippery slope, and the language used to describe it would reflect this tension. Does such an attitude make you think of an opponent or a loving God? It's up to you to answer. If after this you think that the governing body has not sinned, that's your choice. There is another sin committed by the governing body that directly falls under the law: discrimination against the unvaccinated. After January 2022, we no longer heard anything about vaccination from the governing body. It must be said that they had announced the number of COVID deaths to us. There were proportionally 4 times more among Jehovah's Witnesses than in the entire world. Since that time, and repeated almost at every meeting, it is necessary to obey Jehovah and his organization. It is necessary to obey Jehovah and his organization. An elder from my congregation even added, it's inseparable. Moreover, Jehovah's Witnesses have shown even more zeal in applying coercive measures than other groups. Wearing a mask was mandatory until October 2022, even though it had disappeared everywhere else, for at least 6 months. And then, December 19th, 2022, arrived. All the elders worldwide received this letter in their JW.org inbox. Only those who are fully vaccinated against COVID-19 will be able to attend in person during a theocratic school. With a special note for coordinators, please ensure that all the elders in your congregation who plan to attend the Kingdom Ministry School course are fully vaccinated. And this measure remained in effect for a little over a year until March 2024, while there were no longer any vaccination requirements in French society, in the world as well. The governing body committed an unimaginable sin. It became biased. All Jehovah's Witnesses knew these words contained in the book of Acts of the Apostles, chapter 10, verses 34 and 35. Then Peter began to speak. He said, "Now I truly understand that God is not partial." So after Jesus' death, his disciples understood that they should no longer show partiality as the Jews did. Jehovah's Witnesses, moreover, pride themselves on not discriminating. There is no racism, everyone loves and respects each other. And there, while everyone had observed that the vaccine neither prevented transmission nor the disease, the governing body exerted illegal pressure on the elders and pioneers, who are supposed to be examples for others. And by exerting this pressure, it was indirectly putting pressure on all Jehovah's Witnesses worldwide, as if they hadn't been vaccinated enough. By the way, just for the record, a week after receiving this letter, an elder from my congregation was urgently admitted to the hospital for acute pancreatitis, one of the side effects of the COVID vaccines. He had certainly complied with this letter by completing his vaccination schedule and getting a 3rd or 4th dose. Well, you should know that the elders, in general, were well aware of the side effects of the vaccine and did the bare minimum to comply. Some stuck to just 1 dose, saying that since they had had COVID, it was enough. An Italian district official even had the audacity to say that he had vaccinated himself with a vaccine product, with a natural product, as the Central College had not specified with which product to vaccinate. You can find all these anecdotes and many more by reading the numerous testimonies on the site Effets Indesirable Jabu.fr. When I received this monstrous letter, I wrote to the branch in my country to denounce this sin, this blatant violation of the law that inevitably resulted in the death of several Jehovah's Witnesses. Why do I say inevitably? Because since the beginning of the COVID vaccinations, there has been on average 1 death per 1,000 injections, which means for 3 doses, 1 death for every 300 vaccinated. Given that there are about 10% elders among Jehovah's Witnesses, approximately 800,000 elders, this statistically results in more than 2,660 deaths. And this only concerns the elders. To obtain reliable information on the statistics of adverse effects, I recommend this book by Pierre Chaillot that has just been published in French. You will certainly find other books in your country if you do not live in France. The branch of Jehovah's Witnesses in France did not respond to me directly, but took steps to force my resignation. The 10 elders of my body of elders all acted complicitly and pushed me to write a resignation letter. None defended me. None dared to denounce this sin and this violation of the law. They had all already become robots. After 25 years of good and loyal service, I was dismissed because I was not vaccinated, and because I was denouncing blatant discrimination. The question that every elder, or even every Jehovah's Witness, aware that the members of the governing body have sinned gravely, must ask themselves, do I denounce this sin, or do I cover it up? And it is not a small sin. The sins I have mentioned have led to the death of tens of thousands of Jehovah's Witnesses. To conclude this episode, I can assert that the governing body has sinned against God by violating the conscience of millions of Jehovah's Witnesses, by extorting the consent of Jehovah's Witnesses through great mastery of the art of manipulation, by discriminating against unvaccinated individuals, and by requesting the vaccination status of individuals when it is strictly confidential information protected by medical confidentiality. You can well imagine that these sins are also blatant violations of the law. This will be the subject of our next episode. We will talk about, on one hand, the summoning of the governing body members to a religious disciplinary committee, how to feel free to speak about this subject, and what each person can do with their country's justice system to condemn these violations. See you next week.